Hello, everyone, and welcome to Losing You, Gaining Yourself, our writer series. And today we are talking with Theresa Franklin, TG Franklin, and welcome so much to our show.
Thank you for having me.
I met you at a conference in Tennessee back in March.
Hmm.
And I really loved how laid back you were. And I had no appreciation at the time the talents that run inside your mind. And I was able to look you up on Amazon. You've got quite a lovely fan page going on there. And
Oh, thank you.
yeah, and it shows your books and so forth and, what you've written. And I noticed that you have a lot of cute little short stories. And there are artists out there, writers that, they're so concerned with getting that novel out, but they can also be short story writers because there is, you know, a market for like the flash writers. So
Oh, yeah.
why don't you talk to us a little bit about your your writing, your flash writing, and what got you into those writing those shorter stories.
Um, for one thing, I'm a really painfully slow author, and the short stories just make more sense for better output.
Okay.
um, Writing a full novel takes me a lot of time,
Hmm.
and I can get, like I said, more content, better content out writing short. And those worlds are always expandable, which means I can always go back to them.
Okay. So that's a wonderful thing to keep in mind. Now, how long have you been writing? I mean, tell me a little bit about your journey as a writer. At growing up, what you studied. Did you go to college for it, or is it stories something that's always been part of your world since childhood?
Stories have always been a part of my world. I don't remember a time when I could not read. My mother and father were both big readers,
Mm-hmm.
and we made weekly trips to the library where we got huge bags of books. Um, and then I was always making up stories in my head. And in high school, the writing bug hit me. And I was going to write a Harlequin,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So I
Nice.
started writing that, and then life got in the way. When you're young and stupid, you don't really pursue your dreams sometimes with the passion you should.
Mm-hmm.
And then it took me several years to even think about it again. And my sister called and she said, "There's a romance writers meeting that's going to start in Knoxville. Would you like to go?" And that was in 1997.
Okay.
And I said, "Sure." And then I got totally engrossed in it again. And then it took me 7 years to get published.
Okay. Now, why 7 years to get published? Were you going the traditional route of getting a publisher, a publishing company, and doing like a hardback sort of thing?
No, I'm just that slow.
Okay.
Um, Plus, publishing was a little different in 1997.
Right.
Ebooks had just barely made a blip on the screen. And at that time, an e-reader the size of a Palm Pilot cost about $600 to $700, and only about three companies were putting stories out for it.
Right.
So 7 years, I kind of worked on craft and writing some really bad stuff. And then when I found my voice for short stories, I entered some publishers contests. And as the new publishers were coming onto the scene in 2004, I entered those contests and submitted to some of those small independent publishers
Uh-huh.
and started getting exceptions for those.
Excellent. So, was your first published thing part of a contest winning?
It was.
That's
um,
awesome.
it was a little 5,000 word short story called Sensual Energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I have since got my rights back to it. The contest was based on the theme of Surge.
Okay.
And of course, I'm married to an electrician, so the first thing I thought of was, electrical surge.
Okay. That's a nice
And how,
inspiration.
yeah, and so how could I not write a story based on that theme?
Nice. I like that. Saying you were taking some time to hone in on your craft. When you were honing in your craft, did you take classes, workshops? How did you do that? Or was it just a series of keep writing until you loved it enough to send it out?
Well, a combination of things. We had craft workshops monthly at our SMRW meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also had a standing critique group that several of us were part of at that time. And I also went to several regional conferences like Moonlight Magnolias. Oh goodness, I can't even remember all the names of them now. But I would go to different conferences and learn about, take the workshops and learn about craft. I would enter contests and get feedback that way.
Uh-huh.
So I just did a number of different things.
Excellent. Well, that's good. So you didn't necessarily have to go to college and take courses formally in that way. The workshops and different writing groups like that were instrumental for you.
Oh, definitely.
Well,
Definitely. And, I'm sure a college degree in English or creative writing probably helps, especially with the discipline aspect.
mm-hmm.
But it's not necessary.
Gotcha.
If you can craft a good story, you can craft a good story.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in self-education, so that's right up my alley. That whole thought process, especially when it comes to writing, because the story's got to be there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what you like to read, because the best writers are people who are constantly taking in information and reading books themselves. Is what you like to read close in line with what you write, or do you like to read other than what you write?
I read across the board, fiction, nonfiction. I do tend to read more urban fantasy now, J.R. Ward, Shirley Kenyon, those types of books.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also read this quirky little cop procedural series from a guy who lives in Kentucky, and I can't remember his name now. But it was like the Tenor War Tattoos, and they're just quirky little fun mysteries. And of course, I still read all kinds of different romances.
Mm-hmm.
I read love biographies, and if nothing else is available, I'll read the back of the cereal box.
That's funny. That reminds me of when I was a kid. My mom had always taught us when we clean the table after dinner to scrape like all the remnants into like newspaper and
Mm-hmm.
then, bottle it up and throw it away. That way we wouldn't get bugs or smells or anything of that nature. So when it was my turn to clean the table, I was always reading the newspaper, and it used to drive my mom nuts. She's like, "You'll just read anything." So yeah, I totally feel you on that. That's cute. Now, the stories you write, your short stories, I'm noticing the books that are on Amazon are a lot of kind of like alternate universes, sci-fi, paranormal, that sort of thing. Is that what you prefer to write?
Yes. My first love in reading, and what kind of inspired my first try in high school way back when to try to write it, was historical romance.
Okay,
Love
yeah.
Joanna Lindsay, Jude Devereaux, that sort of thing.
Right.
So, those, I actually tried writing historical romance at first, and it was serviceable,
Mm-hmm.
but I wasn't feeling it.
Gotcha.
I wasn't feeling it writing it the same way I did when I read it
Mm-hmm.
from the great authors who I consider do that. So I played around a little bit, and then, like I said, that first short story that I wrote, it takes you into an alternate dimension. I went back to my showing my age here, my 70s roots, and all those great sci-fi shows we had in the 70s.
Yeah.
And then that's where I found my voice.
Beautiful. Finding your voice, I think, is so important in writing. I remember listening constantly to people saying that write what you know, and I never understood, write what you know like I do now, because I always thought it was like, well, I got to write, based on my life, and my life was pretty boring. So, but what
Well,
is also what you read, and, and what you're feeling and what you're imagining.
when I explain write what you know to people, I always say, the emotions. There are shared universal emotions:
Right.
uh, loss, death, love, hate, anger, pain. Uh, we've all felt those at one time or another.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you write what you know from the emotional standpoint, you can make any story believable.
Page here on Amazon, I noticed that some of your books, and these are nonfiction books because you do fiction and nonfiction books, and I am thrilled looking at your creative writers planner journal. I plan to get that in the very near future because because of your discoveries and your journey with writing, you're able to really help another writer to kind of get focused on what they're doing. Talk to us a little bit about, what it takes, and what's real helpful in writing.
Well, as you said, the focus. And I am an ADHD child grown, which for me means I'm scattered all over the place. And it's hard for me to sit down and say, okay, here is step one, here is step two, here is step three, unless I have something to physically write in to tell me this is what you do first. You identify your goal. What do you want? Do you want to write a short story? Do you want to write a novella? Do you want to write a novel? What are the steps you need to take to do that? If I've got to do any research, I need to know where that research is. And then the back part of that planner journal is actually a set of calendar pages, so that you can write down, was there anything unexpected or anything that just totally interrupted what you thought you should be doing?
Mm-hmm.
And do you know why it interrupted you? Do you know why it caused, such a stir in your day?
Right.
And I did that for me so I could kind of look at patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And was I letting certain things just throw me off kilter more than they should have?
I like that. I like that a lot because I've found that happen to me. I mean, something as simple as somebody not agreeing with a direction I should take on something can affect me and make me stop
Yeah.
writing for weeks.
And it's crazy that we let those things bother us like they do. And
mm-hmm.
so I found that, if I'm sitting there and I've got my calendars, and I've really become a calendar freak lately.
Mm-hmm.
But if I've got those planners and those calendars, and I can look at this big chunk of time and I can say, why in the world did I let that bother me 2 weeks ago? It's certainly not bothering me now.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of builds up your defenses.
Right. That's a good thing. Okay, so now I want to go more into a personal thing because you have a diary for elder care, a journal. And
Yes.
I love this. Having parents that have been in and out of hospitals and, changing medications. And this was so phenomenal because I've been documenting different things in notebooks, and then you lose the notebook or you don't remember where you wrote it down at.
Mm-hmm.
Or this was absolutely amazing. What brought this particular idea to you?
Well, in 2007, the same year I first got published,
Mm-hmm.
my dad discovered he had cancer.
I'm sorry.
And so we spent from November of that year until August of 2008, which is when he passed,
Aww.
taking care of him.
Right.
At the time, my mother couldn't drive. She had had some complications with some blackouts because of blocked carotid artery.
Okay.
So it was me, my sister, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles. We were all doing things,
Mm-hmm.
taking him to doctors or taking him to the hospital or taking him to treatments or
Right.
monitoring medications, all that sort of thing.
Right.
And after he passed, we didn't really give it much thought again.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next Mother's Day, my mother had 2 major strokes.
Oh, wow.
And of course, she survived them, but she was never going to go home again.
Oh, wow. So she ended up in
Um,
a nursing home?
well, at first it was assisted living
Hmm.
because she still could do some things on her own.
Okay.
Uh, but like I said, the strokes were pretty massive. She was in the hospital for over 6 weeks.
Hmm.
And then she went into assisted living. And then she had vascular dementia.
Oh, wow.
Um, and most people tend to lump all dementias into like Alzheimer's, but they're totally different pathologies. Um, so she was in assisted living for a while, for a couple of years, and then she went into a memory care unit as her dementia worsened.
Hmm.
And again, we had the same situation. We had me, my sister, as cousins, grandkids, aunts, uncles. Everybody in the family was doing something um, to help care for her. We didn't have to worry, of course, too much about the medications. We'd review them occasionally and make sure that, like, what does this do and what's its purpose, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
But when, say, my sister would take mom to the neurologist, and then I would take her to her arthritis doctor, and her arthritis doctor would say, well, I noticed that the neurologist, prescribed this, and what did the neurologist say about this particular problem? And I'm going, I have absolutely no idea.
Right. Because it wasn't documented.
Because it wasn't documented. It also has things like, we split up duties, me and my sister, and my sister handled the medical part. So she dealt with insurance companies and doctor's offices and appointments and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
And I handled the money.
Hmm.
And it worked out really well because those are our strengths.
Right.
But so the journal also has, like, do you know where the deeds to the house are? Do you know where the car titles are? Do you know who to pay the yearly insurance and taxes to?
Hmm.
And things to look out for if your parents are still at home.
Yeah.
Like, do they cook? Because that's one of the first things to go. Because if they've done something like they'll leave an eye on
Hmm.
or leave a pot on the stove, you've heard that iconic story,
Right.
and it scares them because they forgot it and maybe caught it on fire, probably put it out before anybody noticed,
Hmm.
but it scared them so much that now they don't want to cook.
Right.
And then, of course, the big fear is, well, if they find out that I did this, they're going to put me in a home. So they don't even tell anyone.
Exactly. Yep.
So it's just got all kinds of things like that, and assessments, and how to keep track of their medications and doctor's appointments, no matter who takes them, and that sort of thing. I said, even if you have a caregiver who comes in and maybe sits with a parent or a grandparent,
Hmm.
I know that's becoming more common now than it used to be. Then there's a daily log in there for them to say, when did they eat, when did they sleep,
Hmm.
are they getting enough activity?
Right. I wanted to go into the writing, the writing and the family support, especially when it comes to like the fictional writing and so forth. Being a dreamer and your daydreamer, and stories always going through your head. How did that relate with your family and creating these amazing little stories and getting them published?
My family absolutely loved it.
That's great.
My mom always enjoyed the fact that I would tell her crazy stories. Now, my mother would never read them, not because most of them are erotic romance, but because they're paranormal.
Right.
That was a love I got from my dad. Now, my dad would have just drank them all up. He would give me more. And in fact, here's kind of a funny story. I also never tried to hide the fact that I wrote erotic romance.
Mm-hmm.
I know some writers do, or used to. I don't think it's that big a deal anymore. But in 2007, a lot of them did. But my dad was a deacon in his church.
Oh, okay.
And I went to homecoming in 2007. They held it in October, and I was published earlier in the year. And several people in the church walked up and was like, Teresa, your dad tells me you published a book. Where can I get it? And I'm like, Dad, shut up.
Not conversation for Sunday service day, right?
No, it's definitely not. But that's how proud he was that his daughter had published a book. He was just telling people at church that his daughter was publishing. And I don't know that he told them if it was erotic romance or not. I'm guessing no.
What is your favorite story that you've written?
Amethyst Nights.
Ah, yes. It's also your longest one you've got out here.
No, it's not, actually. Heavenfall is a full-length novel.
Oh, okay. Let me go back
But
here.
it's not erotic romance. It's straight sci-fi.
Ah. Oh, speaking of sci-fi, you also have this incredible book on how to build worlds. I just thought that was so cool because it's funny when I looked at it because I have a book, a historical novel that I created. Oh goodness, back in 2007, I think I started this book, and that was what I had to do first was create the world. And I just thought it was so cool that you have a
Mm-hmm.
guide for doing that, and I had to do it from scratch the hard way.
Well, if I had just been a little faster.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I gave uh, and still do give several workshops, and one of them is on world building, and it just kept getting longer and longer and longer. And I thought, yeah, let's just put it in a book
There we go.
and put all that information in there.
That's wonderful. So you do workshops.
I do.
How often do you do them? I mean, tell me a little bit about these workshops.
Oh, they run the gamut. One of the groups that I'm a member of, 60,000 Words, I tend to do workshops twice a month there.
Mm-hmm.
Not always. Sometimes we go a couple of meetings without actually having a workshop. We'll just do like general writing discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I do workshops on world building, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Plotting without being a plotter, because I'm a total pantser. And then character creation is probably the one I enjoy the most, because without good characters, none of the rest of it matters.
Right, right.
And I also do deconstructions, a couple of deconstructions.
Now, what's a deconstruction?
That's where I take a movie
Mm-hmm.
and I will break it down and go scene by scene as if you were writing it. What would this translate to in the written word? One of them I do deals a lot with Chekhov's gun,
Mm-hmm.
because I love Chekhov's gun.
Okay.
If you can master that skill in plotting,
Uh-huh.
you can master anything. And for those who don't know what Chekhov's gun is,
Yeah, you lost me on that one.
well, it doesn't go pew 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 in space, even though I do love my sci-fi. Chekhov was a Russian author who several different versions of it, but basically, if there's a gun hanging on the wall in Act 1, it must go off in Act 2.
Okay.
The admonishment there is to write tight, no wasted words, and it's also a type of foreshadowing.
Okay.
So that's why I said if you can master that,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, as a short story writer, you have to master it, or your short stories are going to be any good.
Right.
But yeah, you don't get frivolous. You don't, you cut everything out except the meat of the story.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean that you skip on description or narrative. It just means that if it's there, it better be important.
Gotcha.
And then another one I do is the hero's journey. I break down a movie using the hero's journey.
Okay. I like that. And your workshops are done just where you live at in East Tennessee?
Yeah,
Okay.
they are now. I've done a couple of workshops at other conferences and panels and different things. Haven't in quite a few years, because after the 9 years or so that I was taking care of parents,
Mm-hmm.
traveling was not a thing that happened a lot.
Right. Yeah. Let's go back to the issue of when life gets in the way of writing. You got these stories burning in you. It's something you love to do, but it can be frustrating when you're in a situation where you can't write because you have to do this, that, and the other. Do you have any suggestions for people when they're dealing with that, how they can still kind of steal away maybe time for it or deal with it?
Well, honestly, I'm going to say take care of life first.
Yeah.
You have to. Now, I know some cases aren't as extreme as, you're taking care of a dying parent or even a dementia parent.
Mm-hmm.
But, you've got kids, you've got jobs, you've got spiritual life,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got me time. And if all you have left at the end of the day is me time,
Mm-hmm.
use it. Because if you don't, it's going to get to the point where you don't even have me time, because you're going to be so mentally exhausted that the me time isn't even going to help.
Okay.
So you take care of those things,
Mm-hmm.
and you use your me time, and eventually you will get to the point where those things become more routine,
Mm-hmm.
and then your me time can become writing time.
Okay.
And then be flexible. Um, I like to write on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
I go down to my local Panera and I'm there at 7 o'clock when they open the doors. And I throw on my headphones and sit in the booth and drink my coffee and write.
Okay.
And I kind of got out of that a little bit. And then now that it's warm,
Mm-hmm.
I've given that up to go walk a couple of miles in a park.
Gotcha.
Uh, because I'm out of shape. I don't know if you saw the wellness journal.
I did. I'm looking right at it.
But so yeah, and again, it was just like I looked at several different wellness journals, and I thought, this isn't what I'm going to do. I'm not going to track my macros. Here's what I want. I want to know how much water I'm drinking, how much exercise I'm getting, and what I'm eating,
Mm-hmm.
and how I feel. Did I sleep well? Because that's a big thing.
Right.
A lot of people don't sleep well.
True.
And so I did that for me, and I thought, well, if I'm going to do it for me, I'll just stick it up there. Because, I am getting older,
Mm-hmm.
and I need to take better care of myself. And it's pretty hard to write from a hospital bed if you're sick.
Yeah. I'm feeling you on that.
So I'll take a Saturday or a Sunday when I'm normally at Panera at 7 o'clock, and I'll take a couple hours and walk.
Mm-hmm.
Just so that when I'm working on something else huge that I may really need those 2 days to write,
Right.
I can do it. And I'm not going to have to worry about, is my back going to be killing me tomorrow, or my ankle's going to give out on me going up the steps, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I hear you. I like how you say start where you are, because so many of us, we talk about getting healthy, and we make this thing, well, I got a plan, I got to have this food, and I've got this piece of equipment and these workout clothes, and then once I get all that going, then I can start being healthy. But yeah, I like that, those words.
Yeah, we know how that goes, don't we?
Yep. Awesome.
So yeah, I throw on my leggings and a long sleeve t-shirt, and I run out to the park. And now I don't walk very fast, and I play Pokemon, and I'm Team Mystic for anybody out there who wants to. Yay! And I just sometimes I invite my grandkids, and we go out and we play Pokemon and get some exercise in. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, you start where you are.
That's beautiful. Well, I am happy that I got to talk with you and really consider some other things that is part of writing, different styles and lifestyle, because our lifestyles affect so much, the product that we put out. And so it's been such a pleasure talking with you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, you've got such a wealth of information on so many different areas. But it all comes out to making us thoughtful writers. And I hope one day I get the privilege of coming out to Tennessee and doing one of your workshops. That might be just a really good time.
I would love it. Because we didn't get to spend enough time together.
Yeah. Well, I will put that on my to-do list.
Yeah, anytime. Also, speaking of start where you are,
Mm-hmm.
if you're an aspiring author,
I am.
start where you are.
Yeah.
Just start writing. That's
so
what we did back in 1997. A bunch of us who got together and started SMRW, which is now ETCWA.
Mm-hmm.
We started where we were. We didn't have the formal education. We didn't know what we were doing. For 6 months, I did not know what the letters POV stood for.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're really wanting to start writing, start where you are.
Yeah.
Holds true in wellness as well as in writing and other parts of life.
Yeah. And with that note, we will conclude, because that is great advice for all of us aspiring writers. And thank you so much, Theresa, for spending time with us here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that's it today, everyone. I thank you for coming and spending some time with us. And until next time, keep smiling.